I guess nobody taught Toa the story of Adam and Eve, because if they had, then she would have known that giving an apple to anyone is never a good idea. Hi guys, my name is Maria Park, and this is Approach to Nerd. And in this episode, we are reviewing Yashahime, episode 7, entitled Meeting Through an Apple, which is a very direct and to the point title. Um, so there were some revelations kinda in this episode, kinda not. We're still nowhere near figuring out what happened to the parents, but from what we saw in the preview of episode 8, we may be getting an Inuyasha and Kagome, and maybe it's a Shomaru and Rin flashback or explanation. Maybe we will find out what happened to them next week. Maybe. But for this week, we're going to basically settle for nostalgia, because there's a lot of that going around in this episode. And before I get into that, I would like to say that I thought it was cool that we were introduced to 2 brand new demon slayers. They were Nanaska and Rakuta, and they're on Kohaku's team. And something interesting, throughout this episode, it's been made very clear that Toa seems to be the most reliable out of all 3 of them. But what's also interesting to me is that without training, or at least training that we're seeing, because honestly, I don't know what the timeline is at this point of how long they've been in the feudal era. Toa last week was not able to sniff or sense demons at all, and now she's almost a pro in 1 episode difference. So it's very interesting, because Toa at the beginning of this episode is basically the bait for a demon that they are basically hunting. And she's able to sense when the demon is coming. And then, of course, the Nazca and Rakuta, like, bind it or whatever. And then Setsuna and Hisue, who I swear remind me, when they're on Kilala, it's like, this is like opposite day. It's like, what if Kilala belonged to Miroku and Sango's like hanging on in the back? It's so weird, but they absolutely remind me of Miroku and Sango. I don't know why. So that might be a couple that hooks up later in the series. But, you know, they are pretty much the aggressors that they attack. So it's interesting. The dynamic is very interesting between all of them, really. But yeah, lots of nostalgia. Just looking at Kirala with Setsuna riding on the back and Moroku riding in the front, you know, and really it's Hisue and Setsuna. It's so weird how it's uncanny to me how much they resemble, you know, Hisue's parents. So after they have the battle, they defeat the demon, they go back to Kaide's place, because everybody stays with Kaide apparently. So her home is an open door. So they go back, and, you know, basically Toa's trying to go to sleep, but she asks Setsuna to play the violin. And she just does it without hesitation, no argument, nothing. She's like, oh, okay. And she just starts playing the violin. And so Toa falls asleep, and then she starts having this dream. And remember the burger place that Kagome used to hang out with? I looked it up. I think it's called McDonald's. Like, they couldn't say McDonald's, so it was WC Donald's or Donald's or whatever. Well, that's where in the dream Toa and Setsuna were. And she, like, bought Setsuna all this stuff, and she's like, she got her a huge, like, stuffed version of Kagome's cat Buyo, and then Setsuna's able to fall asleep, and Mo, you know, Mei's mother, Sota's wife, is playing the violin in like this black, you know, dress. And right before she fell asleep, Toa was like, well, every time I came home from a fight, Mama Mo would play the violin. And I'm like, this is a lot to unpack. You know, a lot to unpack in this scene. But I thought it was interesting that we're made to assume that, you know, Toa believes that the girls are coming back to the present, even though Moroha wasn't there, that the girls are coming back to the present when everything is said and done. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, it was a very acid trippy dream. So just putting it out there. We saw Kuromaru in this episode. Guys, okay, so at first I thought it was Sesshomaru, except his markings are red and Kuromaru's markings are like kind of bluish, I guess, and his eyes are green. So I'm like, okay, I don't think it's him. But what's so weird is we see Kyuki, and she's like giving an update on, you know, oh, well, you know, the girls defeated another one of your, you know, demons. She also said that Tokatsu, Katasu was defeated by Sesshomaru's daughters and Inuyasha's daughter, basically, and Moroha and Sesshomaru's twins. And what's so interesting to me is that Kuromaru does not seem to know who the hell she's talking about. He's like, who's that? And I'm like, so she's like, he's one of the 4 perils, the one you gave the red rainbow pearl to. What? And Kuromaru is like so calm, and he's just sitting there eating grapes. What is happening? I'm like, what is happening? My first question of this review is, why doesn't Kuromaru know who his own people are? Is he that entitled? Or does he generally just not give a crap? I mean, he doesn't give a damn on who his people are. And I mean, you would think if you gave one of your minions the red pearl, the red rainbow pearl, that you would know who the hell they were. That is weird. That's flippin' weird. And then, of course, Kyuki has plans to take all of the rainbow pearls because she wants to have more demon power energy than than Kuromaru has. So she's already planning to overthrow him. This is crazy. I don't know what's going on. I just don't. But she asked for permission, basically, to take the girls out and get the pearls. And he's like, yeah, not in my taste. Or basically, I can't be bothered, or whatever the hell that means. So, yeah. Very, very weird. So, okay. So the next morning, Setsuna and the rest of the demon slayers, they go off to slay demons, but they leave Toa behind. So she wakes up and she's like offended. She's like, oh, they left me behind. Well, they don't think I'm worth anything, so I'm just going to prove my worth. I'm going to go find the dream butterfly, So Kaide's like, whatever. So on her journey to go find the of course, the dream butterfly, she runs across this pirate named Riku, who's shady as hell. He is shady. He's able to use like powers to manipulate water, and it's just interesting. And he basically says, well, anybody can really do it if you apply yourself, basically. I'm like, I think that's how that works. But something interesting is that so she sits down to have a picnic after she helps him find the river, which he mistook for the ocean for some reason. And he looks at her food, and he's like, oh, look at all this wonderful food. And he grabs an apple and he eats it, and he likes it. And she's like, well, give me the core, because I don't want to mess up history by planting a tree here, And he even eats that, which is interesting. But in return, he gifts her with the real Kiku Jumanji katana, the one that she has is broken, and it's not real. And she gives him the real one. Well, we come to find out he actually stole it from the Kanto Kanrei clan, and they basically arrest Toa for stealing it, right? Like not even 5 seconds after he just jumps on this raft or whatever and like goes down the river. So she's been arrested for stealing the katana. And Setsuna, I think she had a lot of character development in this episode, even though she says very little. She's getting very protective of Toa. She comes back and Kaide's like, oh yeah, your sister went off to look for the dream butterfly, and she went to the mountain, and Setsuna can sense where she is, and she's like, are you going to the mountain too? That's what Kaide asks her, and she's like, no, I'm gonna go find the dog that strayed from the pack. And I'm like, so they are a pack. So she's accepting that Toa is her sister or in her life, and she's actually getting very protective. So she runs off to go and find Toa, and basically, while she's looking for Toa, she runs into Moroha, who is with Takechiyo, and she's like apparently heading off to basically, I want to say to get Kyuki. And Jubei apparently paid her in advance. So Moroha says, where's Jubei getting all these like high-level demon jobs? And Takechiyo's like, oh, it's better if you don't know. It's somebody that he cannot say no to. And immediately I'm thinking Sesshomaru or Inuyasha basically are hiring them out and giving them work, which is interesting. We don't have Miyoga in this episode at all, so that's interesting. But I thought he'd be there to shine some light on that. But that's another mystery. So who is Jubei's job benefactor? Who is forcing him? Which it sounds like he's being forced, whether he wants to do it or not, to take on these jobs and give them to Moroha. So who's doing that? So it's my next question of the review. But while they're on the way, they run into Setsuna, and Setsuna tells Moroha, well, my sister went missing, because She likes to run off and do shit, in a feudal era that she's never been in by herself, because why not? So they kind of team up to go and find, Toa. Well, on the way, they run into Fubuki, which is one of, technically Kyuki's minions. He's like a giant. Well, he's really not. It's not his real body, but he basically is projecting a huge polar bear demon. And so basically Setsuna tries to take him out, but it's not his real body. And this is where it gets really weird. So in the episode, I believe it was episode 1, we first see that Toa is bound by the Ogi Gayatsu Hiragi Danjo, who is the Kanto shogun. He's questioning her because basically he just wants her to give him information about their clan's future. Like, are they going to survive, basically? But while she's bound there, she starts sensing that Setsuna is near. Setsuna is sensing that she's in there, in the place that they have her holding, I guess the Shogun's place. And she's also sensing, which is really weird, Fubuki's, real body. And so even though her hands are bound, she's able to use the silver rainbow pearl to, literally, shoot energy claw beam things at him. And Setsuna senses it, and she's like, oh, the real body's there. And so Maroha uses what I am now going to start calling the sacred heat-seeking arrows, because she shoots it from where they are. It hits the building, and then it, maybe one of the walls or a pillar of the building, and then it extends inside and manages to hit Fubuki's real body instantaneously. Boom. And I'm like, really? I don't even think Kikyo was that good, but whatever. But yeah, so they're able to destroy him. And then, so if you remember in the first episode as well, Yotsume was actually masquerading as one of the Shogun's right hands or whatever. And so something else about Setsuna's development is she also seems to be getting protective of Maroha, because Maroha goes to attack Yotsume and she's like, oh, your timing's off, you're underestimating him. And she saves Maroha instantly. Just like when they were fighting Fubuki, and they were, in the air, and she's like, don't use your rouge because it's going to drain you. I'll just take this guy out. It's like she's become the older sister of the group, even though, Toa's older than her by probably a few minutes. So I thought that was interesting. So Setsuna's basically coming around to being in the 3-girl pack, and I thought that was very interesting. But, it does end the same way, and they're all going to be pursuing Yotsume, so there's that. But then there's so many questions that I have, Riku. He makes a comment that his master shuns him now, or he was thrown out or tossed aside by his master. So who is Riku's master? When I first saw his face, I thought he was Kuromaru, because he has the green eyes, he has red hair, but there's no markings. But I'm like, well, honestly, he could shapeshift. I mean, Yotsume was taking on this old man's form. He could probably shapeshift too. But at the same time, I'm like, nah, I don't think it's him. Maybe he could be working for Kuromaru. Hell, Kuromaru wouldn't know, because Kuromaru doesn't seem to know who anybody is. Even when Kyuki's in there, she's like, hi, it's me, Kyuki. And I'm like, how does he not know who you are? It is so weird. It's so weird. But yeah, this episode was good. Like I said, half of it was pretty much a retelling of the end that we got in episode 1. After, the girls go and rescue Toa from the Shogun, and she takes the social studies book, so he won't have the history of the future or the past in the book, and she takes Kagome's bike seat, because I guess she didn't want him to have that either, not messing up the timeline, and they pretty much move on, and they're going to try and get to Yotsume. So they're on the chase now. So it's almost like the last few episodes were unnecessary in a way. We just should have gone from episode 1 to episode 7. But, I mean, it did bring some nostalgia. Like, we saw Buyo, it's a big stuffed version of Buyo. And then, we got to see W.C. Donald's, or however we're saying it. The burger place that Kagome used to go to is where Toa took Setsuna. We have some mysteries now. Like, who is Riku the pirate? Is he really a pirate or is he lying? Who hired or who's forcing Jubei to hire Moroho out with these big demon, high level jobs? And why can't he say no? I just feel like we're getting closer and closer to the mystery. And the biggest one is, why doesn't Kuromaru, this all powerful Beast King, know who the hell his minions are? I'm like, why don't you know these things? Did the dream butterfly zap your brain too? Is it really Sesshomaru under there? And maybe when he's merged with him, his eye color changed and the markings went from red to blue. Is it the sensei? Is going through time simultaneously? Maybe he's in two places at once. Is it so taxing that his memory is kind of messed up because he's going, back and forth through time, or is sustaining himself in time? So many questions, guys. So many questions. And I got no answers. So I would love to hear your theory. So please leave me a comment below and let me know. And if you would like to sign up for jury duty, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to know who's next in the nerd ballot, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I can't wait for you to approach the nerd. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it. But hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.